EAGLES, Eagles.
Well, they brought me back for another day. Happy Draft Day Eve, everybody. It is Birds 365, and we've got 35 hours, 57 minutes, and 50 seconds, John McMullen, until the NFL draft. And we've got you covered with a big day here on Birds 365. Mike Gill filling in. John McMullen never goes away. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, I can't wait for it to get here, man. I wish I could turn off my phone in these last 2 days because the rumors just tilt up and you're like, yeah, look in different ways.
Well, we're going to sniff out the rumors. Which ones are rumors and which ones have some substantiation to them?
Trading up, that's got some substantiation. That's
all
about
right.
it.
Hold up there. I'm going to set the scene. Bob Groats next hour. Bob Brookover. It's What About Bob Day here on Birds 365. We've got the draft hits and misses. I'll give you my 3 favorite players at 22 right now. I put the list together, and I finally have come down to the 3 players that I would be most happy with. John, I know you have some trade-up thoughts. And Rodgers' role, Isaiah Rodgers has been reinstated. So let's start with the player that's already on the team. Why don't we hear? Isaiah Rodgers, a kind of out of sight, out of mind guy. He was gambling, and he got suspended for the year. So he has not played in 1 full calendar year. He has been reinstated by the league, and he is now back. And there's a lot of speculation about what his role is, what he is, what do they see him as? Does that change their draft day plan? Because now they have this guy. I imagine they thought they were going to have him, so that probably wouldn't trade much. But give everybody a little background on who he is and what potential role, because certain people look at him as an outside guy. Some say, he can play inside, but he's more suited for the outside. So what do you kind of see Isaiah Rodgers being reinstated? Big deal? Not that big of a deal. What do we got?
I would say somewhere in between. I think a lot of people have talked themselves into him being some kind of difference maker, shapeshifter. You know, the Eagles signed him essentially to $1 million 1-year deal. And it's one of those things the Eagles do that maybe they see a little bit of a market inefficiency. They're willing to be patient and wait for him to be reinstated. And that's what happened. And all of a sudden they have a legitimate NFL player in the mix. But, you know, I got that question a lot. Does this change them to offensive line or something else away from cornerback? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If they want a top-tier cornerback and they're going up to draft a top-tier cornerback, Isaiah Rodgers is not going to affect that thinking. Not
I would imagine they had the plan. They already had planned for him returning. So all of their draft stuff leading up to this point would still be within mind that he was going to be here.
Yeah. I mean, the assumption was he was going to be back unless he gambled again. And then you chalk it up to we made a mistake and you move on. But he's back in the mix. He's, you know, the inside outside thing is interesting to me because he played outside in Indianapolis the vast majority of the time. He's got about 1,000, just over 1,000 career snaps. 917 of them are outside. And, you know, you have 2 groups of people who say he's a slot corner because he's 5'10" and 170 pounds. And the other people is an outside corner because he played outside in Indianapolis. Well, for those who don't know, Indianapolis had Kenny Moore, still has Kenny Moore, who might be, you know, he's in the conversation for being the best slot cornerback in football. So he's not getting on the field in the slot in Indianapolis. And they needed an outside corner. They tried him. He's played about 400 or 500 snaps over the past 2 years. So part-time player, and he's held up pretty well. And, you know, the potential's there for him to get better. where does he fit? If you're drafting Quinyon Mitchell, Terry and Arnold in the first round, you might want to look at him in the slot. If Avonte Maddox stays healthy, you might want to look at him outside as a backup there. But, the Eagles have the Eagles, to me, aren't in the need of developmental players at cornerback. I think they have, especially outside. I think they have two good ones in Kaylee Ringo and Eli Ricks. They might not be ready right now, but I don't think you're concerned about finding another developmental piece out.
I brought this up last week, John, that if you don't draft one in the first round and get like that high level one, are you okay with the room that you say, you know what, we don't really need to focus on a guy in the fourth or one of those fifth round picks because we've got a bunch of those guys? Why crowd the room? Go add depth at other. Or is that not the way these teams?
Yeah, I kind of look at it the same way, but I'd like to add a slot player because the reality is
that's true.
On day 3, I'm talking about, not early, day 3, in that situation you're talking about. Avonte is a really good player, but you can't count on him. You have to be realistic, and he's down to a 1-year deal now. So even that, if he plays well, then you have to make that difficult decision. All right, is he going to hold up? He's going to get more money than we want to pay him. So you might only have him for 1 more year. Either way, good scenario, bad scenario on the field. And then they signed Tyler Hall, who's a traditional slot cornerback in free agency, but it's not somebody you're going to count on. Zach McPherson's going to be back from his torn Achilles for the final year of his rookie deal, but he's on the final year of his rookie deal. There's no guarantee that he's going to be anything meaningful. So I could see him on day 3 adding a slot player. But yeah, not an outside corner, because I think you have developmental players on the outside that you should be very excited about, to be honest, especially Ringo. Rick's a great coverage guy, by the way.
Yeah, but those guys all project more as outside guys, right? I mean,
Ringo and Ricks, and that's part of the problem with Ricks. Poor Ricks, big 6'2" long guy, forced to play in the slot. So many guys were playing out of position last year in the slot. Bradbury, Ricks, Sidney Brown is a safety. They had to play him in the slot, and they look bad. Well, of course.
Envision, you got guys who were the smaller, quicker wide receivers in the slot. You guys like your Edelmans and like the small, quick guys who just catch, turn, and get up the field. You got a 6'2" guy trying to stick with him, not conducive. So that's why you take a look at like the guys that we mentioned. They don't really, you can't just say, well, he's a corner, put him in the slot. That's not really the way that it would work. But with Rodgers, he does have a profile that would be more of a inside guy, even though he's done more of his work on the outside.
Yeah. And again, that was circumstance. If you want to get on the field in Indianapolis, it's not going to be a slot unless Kenny Moore gets injured. So,
now, would you say that if Avonte Maddox is healthy, that he would clearly be the slot guy?
Yeah, to me would be, if he's got, if it hasn't affected his skill set, and he's still a young guy. So there's no evidence to me that he was declining as a player from a skill set or trait standpoint. It was all about injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason with Avonte. Avonte plays like he's 6'2", 205, and he throws his body around. Yeah. And he ends up getting hurt, which is, obviously a catch-22. But yeah, Avonte Maddox is better, completely healthy in a pristine world. Yeah, Avonte Maddox is better than Isaiah Rodgers.
Yeah. So I'm very green at hosting this show. This is only like the 4th time I've done it, but I'm looking at some of the comments and I can't see that well, but I do say somebody says, I didn't know Eli Ricks was 6'2". You know what? It's funny. I didn't know that either. And I looked it up. Yes, he is in fact 6'2". I didn't realize he was that wiry. Right. Yeah. I didn't realize he was that wiry of a guy. And that's why he doesn't project well in the slot. You've got a bunch of guys though. You mentioned Ricks. Mekhi Gardner. I think there's, a Telly Ringo, as you mentioned before. There's a plethora of guys. It's just so interesting that none of them are really slot projections, that they got all these guys that are all outside. And then, of course, Bradbury and Slay are the two guys they have there. Now you bring Rodgers into the fold. So there's certainly a lot of competition in this room. But, John, there could be more competition in the room, and it could be high-level competition. Some murmurs beginning. We talked about it yesterday, that the Eagles could look to trade up and a corner could be on the mix. But is one particular corner the one they desire more than anybody?
Well, it will be, yes. The question is, which one is it? And it really comes down to two players, Terrion Arnold and Quinyon Mitchell. And I've been bouncing back and forth on this. To me, Mitchell's got the higher ceiling, and that's an Eagles pick. But I've talked to a number of scouts, and they say Terrion Arnold would be a better fit for the Vic Fangio scheme. And I've kind of gone back and forth with that because it's been pretty consistent. And yesterday, as I said, you get all this information and now I'm tilting back to where I started, and that's Quinyon Mitchell. Because to me, he's the one guy who could turn into the Sauce Gardner type player, the Patrick Surtain type player, the J.C. Horn, if he ever stayed healthy, type player that the Eagles have been interested in. And, the scheme, they've been playing the same scheme for 3 years. This will be the fourth year they're playing essentially the same scheme. But, Vic's 65. He's a senior citizen. He's not going to be here for the long haul. In the best case scenario. So I think you can't get caught up in this guy's a better fit for a scheme if you think the other guy's much more talented, because you might change coaches down the road a year or two. We know the Eagles' history, and they might bring in a different scheme. And all of a sudden you need more of a press cover corner. And he's talented enough, Quinyon, to do everything. So, too much of NFL draft talk is about, you're going to draft a good player or a bad player. Well, player development's a big part of it. And you got to develop players, and you probably want the guy with the higher ceiling. So now I'm kind of tilting back to Quinyon Mitchell. But those are the two names, Quinyon and Terrion Arnold. If the Eagles are going up, and many have speculated, the big talk is 12 or 16. I can tell you this: 12 is Denver, 16 is Seattle. Seattle always trades down. Denver looks like they want to manipulate to get Bo Nix later in the draft. They're not going to draft him at 12. They're not comfortable with that. They shouldn't be. But there's a lot of moving parts. Pittsburgh wants Quinyon Mitchell as well. They might be trying to trade in. And the most interesting part is 11 is Minnesota, and they desperately need a corner. But obviously, they're trying to go up and get a quarterback.
So they also need a quarterback.
But why I add that in, because if they can't get up, and they want Drake May, if they can't get up, and New England might very well just take Drake May at number 3, and they can't get up, their next most important position they need is cornerback. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, he might not get past 11 in the worst case scenario for Minnesota. So just because the Eagles want a player doesn't mean they're going to get him. But the one thing you can feel very comfortable about is they're trying to trade up.
Yeah, well, I thought yesterday when we talked to Les Bowen and Martin Frank, they both told the story of, this Eagles trying to sit and wait for a player and teams passing over them in the 2014 draft. And last year we saw the Eagles move up one spot, and people say, why would you move up one spot? And they said, we're never going to let that happen again. So if there's a player that they specifically want, we can all believe that they're going to do everything they can to try to go get that player. The question would be, how far up do they have to go? And that's where, those projections get so crazy. I was talking about Bill Belichick was on the McAfee show talking about like, hey, we're on the board and things are just happening that you never projected that would happen.
Yeah.
You never saw this happening or that happening. And boom, all of a sudden Vince Wilfork's available. So we took him. In no situation did they think they were going to get Vince Wilfork. So you never know what's going to happen. But in that moment, this is where you can be confident that you have Howie Roseman making those quick decisions that can think quickly on his feet to reverse course, change course, or rip up the sheet and start right from scratch. So if Mitchell's the guy and they want him and they have the ammunition to get him, rest assured they'll have him if it's doable.
By the way, Mike, I saw a wild scenario this morning. Now, most of the speculation is sort of centered down to the Eagles are going to trade up to try and get a corner. Now, it was Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano, so very plugged in from ESPN. They said they might try to trade up for a receiver. And there's even a little bit of news seeping in about Brock Bowers at tight end.
All right. Well, we'll get into all that. Those are the fun things because the skill players become a very interesting conversation. The wide receiver one is an obvious tie to the future of A.J. Brown.
Exactly.
And the tight end situation is an obvious tie to what they've done to the past at that position. So let's set that all up. Bob Brookover is here from NJ.com. Was with the Eagles beat, then the Giants beat. He's back with the Eagles beat now. So we'll get tons of insight and speculation. Let it all begin as we are on the eve of the NFL draft. It's one of the great days in football. The future starts now. We see many people streaming in today on this draft eve on Birds 365. Stick around.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
All right, Wednesday morning, Draft Eve, Birds 365. Well, there are a ton of scenarios that always come in on draft day, and we've got the team to figure out which ones are real, which ones can happen, which ones are far-fetched. Bob Brookover, NJ.com, back on the Eagles beat. And you know, Bob, the Eagles beat is a fun one because Howie Roseman has the phone burning up all the time, and he is trying to make moves at all times. So let's get your initial thoughts on moving up and using a pick 50 or 53 to do so. Does that sound like something that Howie Roseman would and should do tomorrow night?
The old phrase, I feel strongly both ways, because, and here's why. So, and really it doesn't have anything to do with anything except it's really fascinating. The Eagles have made the 53rd pick 3 times in the 21st century. Their 3 guys are LaShawn McCoy, Miles Sanders, and Jalen Hurts. There have only been 4 Pro Bowlers in the 21st century picked 53rd overall. The Eagles have picked 3 of the 4. Do you really want to give up that 53rd pick? I mean,
so you should give up 50 then, Bob.
The 50,
don't even bother with 50.
Which makes no logical sense.
Yeah.
The 53rd pick seems to have worked out better than the 22nd pick for them.
That was they moved up to get that one, and that was Andre Dillard, which it worked out fine because then they moved up. They had moved up the year before to get Jordan Mailata, and everybody knew that he was going to be the next great left tackle for the Eagles. After
everybody, actually, Baldy and Ross Tucker were a ground floor on that. I give those guys credit. So, the former offensive lineman looked at Jordan Mailata and said, "Boy, oof, the traits were there."
He had the measurables of one Liberty Place, and they said, "Yeah, we like that."
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that Howie makes the 22nd overall pick. Some other research I did was he's traded first round trades 75% of the time in the 12 drafts he's made. He's been involved in first round trades. Not only that, in the history in the 21st century, nobody's wanted the 22nd pick. That pick's been traded like 62% of the time. Yeah. Right. So you factor in those 2 things, and you're like, there's no way. And then to me, Howie's going to want the best of, and to me, I still say either an offensive tackle or a cornerback. For me, I would go with after the cornerback because, part of the Jordan Mailata thing is that Jeff Stoutland was a huge part of making him into what he is today. When you have Jeff Stoutland, you have somebody who is brilliant at molding guys, although it didn't do a great job with Andre Dillard, I guess. But you have that. And I just think the bigger need is at cornerback. I think they're going to move up to get one of those guys.
So that is separate from that. Howie has never taken a corner since 2010. No first round pick for Howie Roseman at that position.
No, none. And the Eagles have only taken 3 in their history. And here's another reason to take one, because the three they've taken have been pretty good. Lito was the last one. He was a Pro Bowler. He was great the year they went to the Super Bowl. Before that, it was Ben Smith, who was his trajectory was to be
Georgia.
What's that?
Georgia, another Georgia guy.
Yeah. Who knew even back then? But his trajectory has been a terrific player before he got hurt. And before that was Roynell Young, who maybe should be in the Eagles Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Roynell was a good player. Yeah. But you know why? I don't blame Mike for bringing that up. But you know why I don't care about those kind of stats?
Because they don't matter this year.
Well, yeah, they don't matter this year, but they've tried. They wanted to take Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn, and the DeMonte. They wanted to take Derek Stingley, but he went 3rd overall, whatever he wants. So, I mean, they've been very interested in corners.
Yeah.
The board just hasn't broken their way.
Are they interested in corners if it's an elite, like a top 10 situation?
Yeah, basically.
Not so much that second tier guy is what we're saying.
And what John just said could absolutely happen again tomorrow. You know, they want Quinyon Mitchell or Terry and Arnold, and so do the teams in front of them, and they're not willing to make that trade.
Exactly. So, Pittsburgh evidently is trying to trade up to get a corner. Minnesota, if they can't get the corner I just mentioned in the opening thing, if they can't get the quarterback, and obviously they need the quarterback, but there's no guarantee they can go up and get him. Their second spot would be corner, and they're 11. So you're not getting above them in a trade up. And all of a sudden, if it's Quinyon Mitchell, which is the guy I sort of bounced back to, Bob, he might not be there, and he might be screwed. And, they might take the offensive tackle, and people will be saying they haven't taken it next year. They haven't taken a cornerback since Lito Shepherd, which is factually true, but kind of meaningless.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Now Isaiah Rodgers, that doesn't ship things for you. The splash, he's back.
Yeah, well, I don't know that Isaiah Rodgers, he hasn't played in a year for one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's
some Eagles fans have talked themselves into they got Deion Sanders, Brookie. I don't know about your social media, but mine is like, this guy's phenomenal.
He was like a backup quarterback for a year. The guy that can't play is great. So
always backup quarterback situation.
So I think it's a good thing for them that there's another body that they can look at, and who knows how. The other thing we don't know is, can James Bradbury have a bounce back year for the Eagles? He's been good. I mean, I think it was 2017-18 he had a really not very good year, and he bounced back nicely from that. Now he's obviously going to be older. He's in his 30s now, but the guy's a pro. He knows how to play the position. So,
well, I love James, and I'm sure you love James from covering him with the Giants and now with the Eagles. Great guy, but I bottom line, Brookie, I don't think he's getting the opportunity if they draft a corner in the first round. Then I think he's going to be a post-June 1st cut. I'm sure they'll try to trade him, but I'm sad by that, because I think he would. I've said this pretty consistently. I think he's going to have a bounce back season in Vic Fangio's scheme if given the opportunity. But if you're not given the opportunity, it's kind of hard to have a bounce back season.
Right. But I'm with you 100%. I mean, on all those things, I go to the Sixers game the other night. Those officials would have called in that Super Bowl. They called that penalty against him. They would have called they would have called. They would have called the foul. Yeah.
Bringing up some bad memories. Don't get the Sixers fans started, Brookie, because complain about officials. You can also box out. I'm just saying, teams get screwed by calls all the time. That doesn't mean you have to give up. That's all I'm saying.
I opened a can of worms.
Persevere. Yeah.
It's a we're at the eve of the draft, and you start to hear all the stuff. But it feels, guys, do you feel the same way that I'm kind of feeling, that corner almost feels like the fait accompli here, and it almost seems it's too obvious, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, you don't necessarily have to get Quinyon Mitchell or Terry and Arnold. To me, one of the most fascinating guys in the first round is Cooper DeJean, because I've seen him. You look at different evaluations of him. Pro Football Focus, for instance, has him rated as it's their best cornerback at number 8 on their entire big board. You go back, and I just, before I came on, I looked at, I'm curious, what did Cooper DeJean do against Marvin Harrison? And they had a good game, and Marvin Harrison had 7 catches for 62 yards. How good is he? He's a fascinating player, because everybody talks about how he can play corner, can absolutely play cornerback, could also play safety, could play in the slot. And if a guy like that is falling toward you, do you go up and get him? Nate Wiggins from Clemson is on that board. And Kool-Aid McKinstry. Who wouldn't love to have a guy named Kool-Aid on your team? I'd be excited just typing that in. Kool-Aid.
Yeah, the headlines write themselves for Kool-Aid when Eagles fans
had a chance to draft a guy named Ha Ha, and they passed on. They didn't get the opportunity to do that.
No, they wanted to draft Ha Ha.
They had the chance that year, and they didn't end up getting him. So now you could possibly.
Which, by the way, that's another example. The Eagles never draft safeties in the first round. Well, they would have, but Green Bay traded up and they were stuck with Marcus Smith, rookie. And that's kind of what happens in the draft.
I once got a nasty email because I wrote, "Ha ha, Clinton Dix got hurt." Anyway,
that's pretty good.
Boom.
Yeah. So, and Cooper DeJean is an interesting guy where you said he could play corner and or safety, and it would be interesting to see how the Eagles would view him with the notion of, John, as you just said, well, the perception is they don't draft safeties in the first round. So if they draft him, would they try to keep Bradbury and play him at safety, or would this be a situation where we think Bradbury would be a post-June 1st cut?
You know, one of the things I like, I agree with John. Is I don't know about Cooper DeJean. It's a good question, but one of the things I like about what if we go back to the Lito Shepherd era is Lito Shepherd. They drafted Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown, and they said sit, watch, and did for 2 years. And when those two guys came in, you know, they had Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor in front of them, and I'm not sure. Darius Slay and James Bradbury have had good careers. I'm not sure that those two, but hey, you know what? Keep James Bradbury around for a year. The knowledge he's got, we already had that lecture. John was there for the lecture we got from Howie and Nick about, hey, these guys are learning from the best. You know what? You don't have to bring these guys in and absolutely play. Now, I think if you do that with Mitchell and Arnold, you're probably going to have that June 1st cut. But if you draft Cooper DeJean, hey, you know what? Let him roam around and play a little bit. Let him listen to James Bradbury and Darius Slay and learn some things about playing in the NFL. I don't hate that idea at all. And the Eagles have done that a lot with guys because they've been able to. A lot of teams, when you draft a guy in the first round, you absolutely need to plug and play.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think trying, we don't know what Vic Fangio would draw up for him, but he was used in a multitude of ways at Iowa. Would Vic Fangio say, I have a way that I could use him that's not corner or traditional safety? I think that would be a complete wild card of seeing how he would want to incorporate him into his version of the Fangio defense, which he is the architect of, right?
And I bet he has some plans for it if he did it. Yeah, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about Vic utilizing players correctly. I think that was a big problem last season. I think that'll settle down at least somewhat with Vic Fangio, but we'll see. Maybe we even get to talk to him someday, Brookie. Maybe the coordinators.
Yeah, I go back to my Giants days. They talk to like all three coordinators. The head coach, all three coordinators, and like 8 players in one day. Wow, that's pretty good haul.
Yeah, that's you're back in a different situation, different time, to say the least. But I don't even know if the Eagles are aware there's an event tomorrow at the NovaCare Complex. It's just sort of osmosis. We all just show up, and things will happen during the NFL draft. But I digress. Sorry, Eagles, if they're listening, which sometimes they are. When you talk about, I think there's a lot of groundswell of corner, the potential trade up. I saw a wild rumor from Jeremy Fowler this morning and Dan Graziano, who are very plugged in, that they might be looking at a wide receiver, which I'm sorry, I'm not buying. Even Brock Bowers, who I think is one of the best players in the draft, but I'm not buying that. If they end up and they just take the offensive lineman, how shocked would Bob Brookover be by that?
Yeah, I wouldn't shock, because if you go to the,
that's what I mean.
You want to tie in the cornerback stat. I think they've drafted, in that time where they haven't drafted a cornerback, they've drafted 23 offensive and defensive linemen in the first round. So I mean, that's their MO. And you know, I wouldn't be either shocked or disappointed, because you know, the situation is there. They need a right guard. It doesn't sound like they're really enamored with Tyler Steno. They took him the 3rd round last year. Matt Hennessy's the other guy they brought in, a somewhat local guy. And he went to Temple. You know, so I wouldn't be shocked. And the other thing, obviously, is that Lane Johnson's days are growing short. So, you know, it wouldn't be shocking. And for the right guy, you know, absolutely. And you know, everything I've heard is this is a deep drafted offensive tackle. Some of those guys grade to be guards or centers by some people. But hey, if you can get a guard that can go play tackle, if you can get the next Sean Andrews, who could have done it, if you
Sean Andrews was a great player. But I don't know if you guys saw this real quick, Mike, before you jump in. Paul Henbo works for ESPN. Does a lot of good stats. He went back over the past 20 drafts, so we're talking about 2 decades, and judged it by players in the first round who got second contracts. Not a perfect system because you could still be a good player. And he judged the hit or miss rates. The only positions above water, so above 50% over 2 decades, are center, offensive tackle, and guard. Everything else is under 50% getting that second contract. Everything else, only offensive line. So for Eagles fans that get upset, and it's not sexy when you take the offensive lineman, you got a better chance to get a long-term, meaningful player there than anywhere else.
So what would you think if they just stayed at 22 and here's a guy who only plays tackle, that's it, but much better potential, or the guy who has versatility? Do you take the guy who only plays tackle and he stands on the sideline for potentially 2 years, or do you grab the guy who has positional versatility?
Yeah, well, I think the guy is the best tackle is going to be gone for one thing at 22. So he's not going to be there. But yeah, ideally you get the guard who can play the tackle. But again, if you get a guy who you think is absolutely going to be the next your right tackle, and he has to watch for a year or two, that's what they did with Andre Dillard. He wasn't supposed to be plugged in and played. Milata's a different story, but they weren't in a rush to get Andre Dillard on the field. They wanted him to learn the position.
So do we feel like the Eagles are in the fans, they want the guy at 22 or wherever to be on the field immediately to help this team? Is that not where teams, Bob, you've been around the Giants, you've been around the Eagles, do they not need this player to help out immediately? Nolan Smith did not help out last year. He was a first-round pick. We can get into him and how much he needs to help out. But if they take a guy in the first round this year, do they look at it and say, if he's a corner and he doesn't get on the field because we have Bradbury and Slay, oh, well. If he's a tackle because we have Mailata and Johnson, oh, well. Or do they need a player to help this team out?
Well, I might argue if you go back and look at 2022, they didn't, and it was shorter. They had a lot fewer guys drafted, but they didn't really need anybody from that draft class to really come in. And Jordan Davis was the first overall pick. He didn't play that major a role. But last year they ended up needing guys. Sidney Brown ended up having to play more. Carter, I think they knew was going to play more. But it wasn't like a draft where they had a bunch of guys who they thought were going to come in last year, but they ended up needing to, and maybe even Khalid Ringo at the end of the season was playing more, and they started playing Nolan Smith. Maybe that was part of the problem down the stretch, is that they were relying too much on younger guys and guys who weren't ready to do things. It might have been part of the problem, especially in the back end. So yeah, I think it's fine. You go to your Giants point. I covered the Giants last year. Their first 2 picks were Deontay Banks and John Michael Schmitz. They both became starters. Schmitz did not have a good year. Banks had great confidence, but didn't have a great year. Was okay. Now, could they come back this year and be really good players? Yeah, but they weren't NFL. Just plug them in, great stud players. But the Giants had no choice. They had to do it.
By the way, I love Deontay Banks, Brookie. Maybe it's because of that confidence. I think he's going to be a good player, but you bring up an excellent point, especially in Philadelphia, and New York's the same way. I don't care if it's Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold. They're going to struggle as a rookie cornerback in the NFL against some of these receivers that they're going to be up against. And you're going to hear the groundswell. What do we draft this guy for? You mentioned Banks, who I think has got tremendous upside. and it starts pretty quickly. I don't know if it's the age of social media, but people are really impatient. You can't think that way as the Eagles, but I think it's a factor, especially in this scheme we were talking about Baker a little bit. It is complicated for a young player. A lot of zone coverage, a lot of different zones. You got to spin off after the snap. You got to communicate well. You got to pass guys off. There's going to be blown coverages. Does that make you pause and say, maybe I will go in a more safe spot?
Yeah, no, because you know what, trial by fire is the only way to do it. The veteran guys are going to, excuse me, the veteran guys are going to struggle doing it too. I mean, they have to learn the system too, But for the rookies, you're going from algebra to advanced calculus. And it ain't easy. And it doesn't matter that people don't understand. You're still going to hear it, when things don't go right. But I'm going to go back to Deonte Banks. He was great at I'm going to be good. Yeah, he has a way about him. He's like, very short sentences. No, I'm going to be good. I'm going to be good. He had a bad game. That doesn't matter. I'm going to be good. That's the way he was.
I love that. That's the thought process you have to have as a cornerback.
As well as I do. Slay absolutely has it.
Yeah. Well, if you could, Brookie, I think that's an interesting. You've been around the Giants and the Eagles, two NFC East teams, in covering them leading up to the draft. How the two organizations view this day.
Yeah, well, the Giants, Giants fans have viewed this day as a disaster a lot of times. So the Giants are. It's the third year of the Joe Shane regime. If he doesn't have a great year, it could definitely be the last year for the Brian Dable era. I don't know if Joe Shane is on the same short leash. I'm sure he needs to have some guys start to make an impact right now, and he's got all kinds of issues going this year. And again, I think the point before is that the Eagles have basically been able to say, hey, we don't have to rely too much on our rookies. We want to bring them in. At times they have, and obviously Devontae Smith was a guy that came in and had to play right away. And at that point, who was it that led Travis Fulgham, I think, led the team in receiving. So yeah, it does happen, but the Giants seem like to consistently have had to rely on these first round guys. And when that first round guy is Kadarius Toney, and 2 years ago was Evan Neal was a problem, and even Kayvon Thibodeau, he was good as a rookie, but he wasn't great. He had a learning curve. And some people still aren't all that impressed by him, even though he had a pretty good year sack-wise last year. It takes time. To John's point earlier, that you don't just come in this league. The outliers of the guys who come in this league are great.
But it also, Bob, shows, I think one of the differences between the Eagles and a lot of organizations, as you just said, like the Giants are in a situation where they almost are afraid to make a mistake on draft day. And Howie has such,
Howie can do whatever he wants. I talk about it all the time. It's a luxury.
Yeah, he has the freedom to make mistakes where, like, you're kind of implying that the Giants are in a position where they need to get this right. And that's how these two organizations in the NFC East operate differently, where one has the freedom of possibly making a mistake, where the other is, this is a tense moment for them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, now I'm fascinated by this Giants draft because they end up back at 6, which is where they got Daniel Jones, in a draft that's deep in quarterback, which they need. But to me, they should simplify. The Giants should simplify things and just say, hey, you know what? We're going to sit at 6. We're going to either take the quarterback if that we want, or we like. If we have 3 of them, if one of the 3 is there, we're going to take him. If not, we're going to take one of the stud receivers, because Lord knows they need a stud receiver as well. And then you let Daniel Jones play for a year, and you just had all the confidence in the world on him a year ago. So bring him back, and if it doesn't work, then you're up there. Obviously, you don't necessarily have a great quarterback draft again next year. But you know what? either way, you're going to get your look at Daniel Jones and you're going to get your stud receiver.
Well, and it feels like, with the Eagles, Howie, it's offensive line, edge rushers. That's their sweet spot. A team like the Giants, they don't know who they are yet in what they're, and that's, I think, another thing that makes this day interesting is some teams stick to their plan. The Eagles, one of them, and that's why the corner talk is very interesting because they don't go that way.
By the way, with the Giants, Brookie, it's no coincidence. For many, many years, they had consistency in the front office. Jerry Reese and when they shifted away from Jerry, it's been a shit show. I can curse on YouTube. It's been
a revolving door, as well.
It's been awful. And to me, other teams don't watch these teams that have long-term consistency. Everybody calls the NFL a copycat league. It is, but they often don't copy the right things. And when you have GMs GMing for their job or coaches coaching for their job, it generally isn't going to work that well, which is why I'm concerned with Nick Sirianni from the coaching perspective this year. But we'll see how that shakes out. Back to the draft a little bit, Brookie, with the Eagles. And, it takes two to tango. I think it's circling down that the Eagles want to trade up, but that doesn't mean you can trade up. If you're forced to stay at 22, would you like to trade back? If you can't get up, would you like to trade back?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on what a team's offering and what you think you can still get. I mean, how far do you want to move back? If I'm Howie Roseman and I can trade back to either early second round or late first round and also get a third round pick, if the guy I absolutely love isn't there, I would definitely consider that, especially, now you look at, okay, you're going to essentially get 4 players in the top 50 of this draft. If you trade back, say, let's use 32, they trade back to 32, they get a third round pick. So now you got 32, 50, 53, and it's 80, whatever, 85, whatever the number is. So you get three players in the top 100, or 4 players. I mean, I'm sorry. See, this is why I'm not.
Yeah, four in the top 100. Yeah. Which, to me, and from everybody I've talked to, you have those levels. There's probably 7, 8 blue chippers. There's probably 18, 19 real first rounders, whatever you want to describe them. And then you're sitting at 22 and you're not getting one of those players. You can probably get a similar player at 30, 31. I start thinking about seriously trading down if I can't trade up. But that's not it. You need somebody to want to come up to 22 and they're going, why do I want to come to? So it works both ways. But just from a philosophy standpoint, if I can't trade up, I'd like to trade down because you're going to get a very similar player at 22 or 30, say, I think.
Yeah.
Well, the conclusion I came to looking at the 22nd overall pick was nobody wants it.
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
problem.
Yeah, and the other, you talk about is there a player that at 22? We talked about the year where the Eagles had 6 players on their board and they were all there, and then somebody jumped over top of them. Do they have a bunch of guys that they say at 22, we're happy with this guy when they're there? Or is that a spot where they don't think that there's anybody? So in other words, the guy they want, they're going to have to move up to get.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you sit at 22, there's going to be somebody that they like well enough to take. But just given Howie's history, he's chomping at. I think he's chomping at the bit to move up. And again, doesn't mean not going to. And before I go on, I don't want to entirely pick on the 22nd pick, but I do want to bring back some.
Well, Justin Jefferson was 22.
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
The exact history is, of course, number 21 was Jalen Reagor.
Exactly. Yeah.
The other great 22 pick was Demaryius Thomas.
That's pretty good too.
He was a great 22 pick.
You can get a very good player if things shake out well. Right. But obviously, the farther you go, it becomes a little bit more difficult. At Brooke OB, make sure you follow Bob on X, Twitter, NJ.com, does a tremendous job back covering the Eagles. Going to be an exciting draft. And how he said himself, Brookie, it's not, I like the trades. He said it himself. He said,
he said it in that weird voice too. I like the trades.
Who wouldn't, man? Yeah. By the
he
way,
was back. He and Nick were back to their jovial selves. They looked so miserable after the season-ending press conference. They looked like they hadn't slept in about a month. Big bags.
That was exactly how they should have looked.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Depressed. It would look like Jeffrey Lurie scolded them, slapped their hands out of the cookie jar, and now they were back to themselves, just glorious and joking and buddy. Yeah, it was good to see.
Good to see that. That's the way they should have felt, because that's the way the entire Delaware Valley felt. Well, Bob, it'll all happen tomorrow. We'll find out who the pick is, and we'll see your reaction. NJ.com covering the Eagles as they draft 22, but most likely not tomorrow night, says Bob Brookover. Thanks, Brookie.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bob has a great article about the 53rd pick, in which the Eagles, that's some inside information. Or not inside information. It's open to everybody,
Miles,
but you have to do a little dig in there.
Jalen. Yeah.
Who's the best?
So
of the
trade
three?
the 50. That's what that tells me. Trade
53.
the 50.
53 is the pick. Yeah, you're saying trade the 50. Miles Sanders, LaShawn McCoy, and Jalen Hurts were all 53. Wow, what are the percentage chances to get 53 that many times and hit it?
Yeah. Not good. You know, the percentages I just mentioned in the first round are under 50% for that second contract for every single position except offensive line. So, you know, obviously as you get to the second round, it's not an exact science, and, you know, people don't like to admit it. And Miles, by the way, Miles and Jalen, that was back to back. So how weird is it? Do you get the 53rd pick? I think Miles was 2019. Jalen was 2020. They had the 53rd pick back to back, and they hit on it both times. And then if you go back to the 2019 draft, they had 57 as well, and that turned out to be J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So, you know, it's not an exact science. Let's put it that way. And people still cringe over that because DJ Metcalf was on the board. But as I said, and I just wrote about that on Sports Illustrated, he was off the Eagles board because of the neck injury. He had fusion surgery, and they weren't going to consider him until day 3. But people still bring it up, you know, because he's worked out.
All right,
to say the least.
We've got a full another fresh hour coming up. Bob Groats is going to join us at about 9:20. So stick around for Bob's thoughts on the draft. You know, there's so many scenarios every year. You get to the end and it's like this could happen. Yes, it all could happen. But which is the most likely scenario? I know, John, you have a couple of trade up options in your mind as well. And of course, pick 22, as Bob Brookover just said, doesn't look likely for the Birds. So we'll get into all the scenarios. And if you have a scenario, because to me, I'm interested to get a kind of unscientific poll of the viewers. Would you rather draft a player and not know what you're getting, or trade for somebody and know what you're getting? I'm in that boat. If you told me I'm trading 22 to get an actual player who has played and is good, give me the player. I'll give up my 22nd pick. So you guys can chime in on that as well as we give you another hour coming up next on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Well, John, I didn't think the viewers would actually listen to me. They are peppering us with thoughts on what the Eagles should do. Take an actual player at 22 or make a trade for an established guy. And we talked about it yesterday. You can go back and watch yesterday's episode about Patrick Surtain. But if that was available, which somebody said earlier,
easy.
right, mark my words, that will happen. Well, guess what, sir? If that does happen, you will get your words marked and you will get a handshake from me, because that's a move you make 50 times over. I don't know that 22 gets that done, though, does it?
I've said this pretty consistently. I think Denver would trade Patrick Surtain to get a quarterback, but I don't know why you would trade him if you're not getting a quarterback.
They would trade for 22, though? You think that's...
No, other than if you want to go the layered approach and they're adding another pick to go get a quarterback, maybe you can piggyback it that way. The point is, I'm not giving up that asset for anything other than a quarterback, basically. And can you do it in different ways and add picks? And that's what Minnesota's tried to do. That's what the Eagles did in the past when they made two trades to get up to go get Carson Wentz, and you do it that layered way. But I don't think 22 is going to handle them that much. And I think Denver's more likely to go down. Denver's the team that everybody's talking to because they seem to want to go down from 12, and that's because they want to draft a quarterback. But that fifth or sixth quarterback is not worthy of that 12 overall pick. And you make it more palatable for yourself. You get some extra draft capital. And whether it's the Eagles, the Steelers, or somebody else goes up to get a cornerback, a lot of moving parts. But Patrick Surtain, man, he's a really good player. I've never understood why Denver would want to get rid of him other than, I get it for a quarterback because they're so quarterback desperate. And a lot of teams have pigeonholed themselves into a corner this year, particularly that need quarterbacks, particularly Denver and Minnesota. Is there a third? Las Vegas. I mean, Jaden Daniels is trying to get himself to Las Vegas, but I don't think that's going to happen.
John, this time of the year, you start to formulate in your mind. By the way, a fresh hour of Birds 365 is live right now. Bob Groats is coming up in about 19 minutes from now. So we'll add a third voice to the mix. But before we get to Bob, you had a couple trade-up guys that you think are options to move up for that they would possibly target. We get to that time of the year of, all right, who are the guys they would move up for? Who are the legitimate names in your mind that on Friday morning, if I'm back here and I'm filling in on the hosting seat and I say, John, they drafted and traded up for this guy. Who are some of those legitimate options from 22 to where for who?
I think 12 and 16 are the two spots you would look at, and 12 is Denver, 16 is Seattle. Those two teams seem to indicate they want to move down. So those are positions. If you're going all the way up to 12, I think it's only two people in the conversation. No, I should say three. I'm going to put two in a wild card. The two obvious ones would be Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, and the wild card would be Brock Bowers that beat balls because he's one of the best players in the draft. He's one of the few blue chip players. So that's one where you say, all right, this guy's just better than everybody else. And he's only balling. He's only in this position because a lot of teams don't want to draft a tight end. And I know the Eagles have Dallas Goedert, but they drafted Dallas Goedert when Zach Ertz was Dallas Goedert's age now. So they wouldn't be, and you always talk about them needing a third receiver. Well, you can go about it in a different way and essentially play more 12 personnel, two tight ends. You have two great players on the field with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. But that's a way out there wild card, Brock Bowers. The far more likely scenario would be
let me stop
Mitchell
on Bowers. Let me stop on Bowers real quick. Okay. Now he's on the board and it's 10. And it's now 11's on the board. Is Roseman on the phone immediately once he gets past 10? When does he start to feel like it's a realization and saying, you know what? I didn't think this was possible. There he is. Now I got to get to work.
Well, you probably, with him specifically, you probably got to worry about the Jets. That would be the most likely team. And then when it comes to the corners, you have to worry about Minnesota, but you'll have more certainty because they're going to try to go up to get a quarterback. And
also, let me also spin this into the conversation too, John. Brock Bowers, if he is drafted, what kind of role does that player have with Dallas Goedert? Is he an addition to Goedert? Is he a backup to Goedert? You know what I'm saying? Like, can they get Goedert and him on the field together?
I mean, they're going to play a hell of a lot more 12 personnel with two tight ends on the field at the same time. And essentially, Dallas would be the better blocker, unfortunately. So he would probably be the inline tight end more, and Brock would be the more flex receiver. So you're just having a larger, more effective slot receiver. Essentially,
right.
You're just going about it a different way. And, to me, it's such a good player. I don't know how many, let's see, I can run them off, Randy Mueller, Mike Tannenbaum, Mark Dominic, and then draft guys, Rick Saratella, Luke Easterling, they all have the number of real blue chip players, and there's about 6. I'm forgetting people. Ian Cummings, who's one of my favorites. There's about 7, 8, maybe real blue chip players in this draft, and he's one of them from just about everybody. So when you're talking about that kind of talent, That's the only reason I throw him in there as a wild card. And you figure it out, basically.
You do what Chip Kelly did, put up 3 fingers. We need 3 tight ends. I just do this, and then 3 tight ends go on the field.
Yeah, you figure it out. You play more 12 personnel.
But there's been some talk with Bowers that he could be a slot guy. Like that would be his role.
Well, yeah. And he's more of a, he can block. He's, people have compared him to George Kittle, who's tremendous. But I think that's 2-3 years down the road, the blocking part of it. As a flex receiver, yeah, he'll be ready day one to be impactful. And, people love skill position players. So then you start talking about they want more and more and more. And you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, Brock Bowers. That'd be the greatest offense in the history of football.
You turn into the Cincinnati Bengals, who, they don't have that tight end, but you have those 3 receivers, and their problem was the offensive line, and they still made it to a Super Bowl. Now, last year you lose Burrow, that hurt them, but they have 3 great weapons, and it makes them a legitimate force.
And I want to emphasize, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Eagles are going up if they're going up to 12, I think they're going to get a corner. If they're going up to 16, they're probably at that point going up to get an offensive lineman. So I think you'll get.
And who's the lineman they would target in a move up?
I would think it would be J.C. Latham or the kid from Washington who doesn't have a difficult name to pronounce, but I always screw it up because I got to look at it to pronounce. Troy Patanu. I think
he's probably one of my favorite players in the draft.
Yeah. He's got no doubt about it. And in fact, a lot of people think he's going to be a guard. The questions with Patanu is, can he move out to right tackle down the road if that's your plan? And the Eagles can go about this different ways, right? Because now they seem to think Tyler Steen's more comfortable at right tackle. So maybe it works out that Patanu stays at right guard and Tyler Steen eventually moves out to right tackle.
Yeah, John, talk about Steen real fast. He was a 3rd-round pick last year. And obviously a guy that played a little bit they moved him to right guard. I think he started a game at guard. And obviously when they drafted him in the 3rd round, you had this guard competition that Juergens ended up winning. Steen, many people thought could have been the guy because they drafted him in the 3rd round. Did they get to the point where they just now view him as a swing player, as maybe he's not an inside guy and he's a tackle? How are they viewing him after year 1?
By the way, it was not a competition. That was one of the funniest things of the offseason and training camp, because Nick Sirianni went the entire time saying, wouldn't say Cam Juergens was the starting guard. And, he didn't want to hand him the job, and I got it. But he took every single first-team rep. Yeah. And one day he showed up at training camp, and he got the question again, and he said, come on, guys. He's the only guy who's taking a first-team rep. And we're like, yeah, we know, which is why we're wondering why you wouldn't admit it. But anyway, I digress. As a rookie, he played, right tackle at Vanderbilt. He played left tackle at Alabama. That's it. He never played inside, but he had short arms. So everybody showed up at the Senior Bowl, all the NFL people, and they wanted to see him play guard. And the Eagles kind of fell in love with him there, and they thought, oh, he projects, he can play guard at the next level. Then he got here, and shockingly, he was more comfortable at tackle. The position he played his entire career at. And so I think, look, as of today, if they had to play on tonight before the draft, he's the starting right guard. So, would there be hiccups? Is he going to get an opportunity? Yes. But if they end up drafting a J.C. Latham or a Patano, those guys will likely be the starting right guard.
Let
And
me.
he'll be a backup tackle.
I want to get your opinion on this theory, and I see some people, commenting on this, but it does cross your mind is that, everybody just assumes Stoutland's such a wizard, and you get a guy and he'll work with them. Do you use first round draft capital on that position, or do you say, you know what, I'll take a guy in round 4 because I know that we can get the most out of that particular player?
Say that again. I was reading a comment and because someone had pointed out Tyler Steen's got the right guard locker, so he's the right guard. That's not how it's done. Yeah,
But they played tonight.
They started out, yes, he's the right guard right now. But if they draft a right guard, guess what, Tyler Steen, you're out of luck. So, don't put too much into the lockers of that deciding something. But go ahead. I got distracted.
So, if you're going to take a guy in the first, in other words, hey, you have Jeff Stoutland, and you've had such a good track record of getting the most out of players. I mean, you take a look at their offensive line. You got a guy on the 7th round on one side. You had Driscoll, who has played a 4th round player. You've had Big V, a guy who was a mid rounder. They've gotten a lot. Opeta. They've gotten a lot out of guys who have been mid-round picks. So are you more apt to say, you know what? You don't have to focus on a guard or back heir apparent tackle in round 1 because we do such a good job of getting the most out of these guys in the mid-rounds.
Yes and no. I mean, you use Driscoll and Sua as examples. Yeah, they're pretty good. They ended up being pretty good backup players, but you're not really thrilled when
Who's
they're
the other guy
forced
went to
play.
Pittsburgh? I can't remember. Who went to Pittsburgh last year?
The offensive lineman?
Yeah.
They had a Pitt offensive lineman?
No. Went to the Steelers. He played left guard.
Isaac
Right. He was another guy.
Isaac was a 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
I think Jordan Mailata and Jason Kelsey are such outliers. In Jordan's case, we all know why. He never played football before, but he's got this amazing physical ability. He's 6'8" and he moves like he's 275 pounds, not 380 pounds, and he's got enormous strength, and it all came together. And then they have Kelsey, who's a 6th round pick, who predated Stoutland, as hard as that is to do. And he's got this incredible movement skills, and you're like, they can draft anybody. Well, they drafted Andre Dillard at number 22 overall. Jeff Stoutland couldn't develop him into an NFL starter. And he went to Tennessee last year, and guess what? He got cut. And now I forget, he just signed with somebody else, Green Bay, I think. So they'll try to reclamate that project. And you bring up Driscoll. Nobody was happy when Sua Opeta was out there. In fact, the Eagles, at one point in the middle of that stretch where Sua had to start, they said, let's take a look at Tyler Steen, because they weren't thrilled with the way Sua Opeta was playing. And guess what? Jack Driscoll was the right backup at right guard, right tackle. And when they needed a guard last year, they said, we're going to use Sua. So you might get the most out of those players, but it doesn't mean they're top tier players. And, guys who are top, and Isaac turned into a really good player.
Yeah.
It took a while, but he turned into a really good player. I think people forget he got benched at one point for Stefan Wisniewski. And it took him years to get where he ultimately was. And that was a Pro Bowl level guard. So that the higher you are, the better skill set, you have a better opportunity. But yeah, Stoutland's probably going to get more out of him than anybody else. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. And, offensive line is their sweet spot. So if they're sitting at 22, burning up the phones, can't make the move, is it the most likely that they just go with what they know?
Yeah, I mean, default setting, it's not about going about what you know, but it is their default setting. And one other things, like if Howie's plan is to trade up to number 12 for Quinyon Mitchell, it doesn't mean you can accomplish that plan. Maybe Pittsburgh trades up and gets him. Again, maybe Minnesota takes him because they can't get a quarterback. And all of a sudden, plan A's out the window. And then you got to go to plan B, and that's what Howie's good at. He's probably got 4 or 5 contingencies where he'll just go to the next plan, and ultimately that's going to be an offensive lineman. And I think if you're not able to get Mitchell, it could be Terrion Arnold. If you can't make that trade up, it probably goes, plan B probably goes to one of the offensive linemen. That's just sort of the way the foundational principles the Eagles kind of have.
All right. Draft day is almost here. It's one of the most exciting days in the NFL. And the Eagles own pick 22, 50, 53. And then a bunch later on in the draft. We'll do our best to shake them all out. Bob Groach is going to join us on the other side as we still have a bunch of draft conversation and coverage for all you draft nicks out there. Who's the guy that you want to see wearing Kelly green, midnight green, maybe black, maybe white, whatever your favorite Eagles jersey is? Who do you want to see at 22 or a trade? Let us know. We'll be back with more Birds 365. Bob Groach joins us next.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
All right, Birds 365 is back. We've got Bob Groats coming up from the Delco Times. We'll get his thoughts on, all the scenarios that do map out. That's what is so fun about, you said it before, John. There's too much time between free agency and the draft.
Way too much, yeah.
The NFL has done a great job of filling up the calendar with events. What could they put in between to not put so much out there?
I don't think it's a calendar problem. I just think it's a problem with
should the draft be like last week? Should it have been last week?
I've always advocated the draft should be before free agency.
Like the NBA.
Yeah, because that would make more sense from a team building perspective because you'd have a clean slate. Now people argue it the other way. To me, I want to see what I can draft, and you kind of eliminate the reach for need, which would be helpful for general managers if they have any sense. And then after you come out of the draft, you know what you need, and you go pick over free agency to fill in the spots. I think that makes the most sense from a team building perspective, but it's hard to make significant change like that. And some people argue
that the schedule used to get released before the draft. Wasn't it earlier?
April used to be like mid-April. So essentially a week and they moved the draft around too. But the schedule used to be mid-April for many years. And now they pushed it back well into May. And it's always difficult to put that schedule together for a number of reasons, logistics. And now that they've added,
now you got every day. You got every day of the week being.
You got to make TV happy, and they're arguing. They won certain teams. Dallas, the Eagles are one of the big draws. Green Bay. Hey, one of the reasons Green Bay is that Jody and I had this argument many times, and Jody ended up on the right side. I thought the Eagles would have preferred Cleveland in Brazil because it's an AFC game. You're giving up the home game, and Green Bay's expected to be a playoff contender. So the Eagles could have had that game at Lincoln Financial Fields.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's going to be a big deal if they lose that game, and it has playoff implications at the end of the season.
I remember the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl. The next year they opened with Atlanta. And if you remember, they beat Atlanta in the wild card game. And I remember talking about how week one was a potential home field advantage type of game. And people are ripping me because it's week one. I said, you just played Atlanta in the wild card game, the head-to-head matchup. That might be the game that you look back at and say that got us.
There's only 17 of these damn things. It isn't like the NBA or major. Yeah, that's one game. There's only 17 of these things.
Yes.
And when you play a significant Super Bowl contender, and we got to get Bob Groats up. I see Bob.
Yeah, Bob Groats is here from the Delco Times. He's delivering the papers today, it looks like. Is that what's happening down there? He's actually
at the
driving.
Starbucks. What do you got, Bob?
Oh, I got a Starbucks. Yeah, I'm on my way to Brazil for the opener, man.
Yeah, it's a long ride. It's a long drive. So
yeah, a lot of.
You got to get going. You got to get going. There's some. Make sure you stop at a rest area, stretch the legs because it's a long way.
You're right. There's a great rest area in Panama. I was looking at. That's where you want to go. Yeah.
It's like I think it's like a 12-hour travel day, but it's 13. Only 13 hours, but it's only 1 hour difference in the time.
13-hour flight is what I heard.
So I wish the Eagles got the Madrid Spain game. I prefer that game than going to Brazil.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
Well, the fact that the game is in Sao Paulo, I mean, everybody, like, for instance, my girlfriend would love to go to Rio, but she has no interest in going to Sao Paulo. So it's like to try to figure that out to go. I know a lot of these Philly travel trips, they're going to Rio for a bunch of days and then going to Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I'm staying home for that one. I've already
know
made
how
my
safe.
decision.
How safe is it down there? Does anybody know?
No, nobody knows.
I mean, really, it's going to be Dom against what? The
Dom against the
Guard?
world.
Yeah.
Dom against the world.
Yeah.
Dom against the world.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, another draft, and it's another speculative, 48 hours that Howie Roseman might actually pick up the phone and make a trade. How possible do we think Howie Roseman making a deal is tomorrow?
Oh, I think he probably will, unless he's. You know what? Let me take that back, because there's going to be players that drop because of the amount of quarterbacks and wide receivers going off the board early. There's going to be people available, offensive linemen. I don't know that they would trade up for that, but someone could drop into that 22 slot. Even that cornerback John McMullen likes, Quinion Mitchell.
Yeah.
He could draft. I mean,
I don't think there's any way he lasts the 22, Bob.
I mean,
anyway.
I don't get that. What is the fascination with this guy? He intercepted these mid-major quarterbacks who couldn't even.
What is the fascination with any draft pick?
Oh,
I mean,
Lord.
everybody acts like they're everybody
Terry
is.
Arnold over here, him in a New York minute. I'll take it.
I will say Terrion Arnold is probably the safer pick. I would say that, but I think Quinion Mitchell has the higher ceiling, Bob. I'm going for the higher.
Haven't we gone through a whole thing of Roseman trying to outsmart everybody by taking unknown players, and then he takes all these Georgia guys, and now none of them can play?
Yeah, that's you know what? I was looking up Georgia guys last year after the lackluster production of the Eagles Georgia guys, and there's only been a few of them that have been drafted highly that have been real productive. I mean, it takes a couple of years to figure that out. But
Jalen Carter can play, by the way, so
yes,
keep him out of the. But the rest of the guys are still questionable. And by the way, Tyler Steen, Alabama, put him on the Chance Warmack plane right now of Alabama guy who can't play.
Hey, you're saying Chance couldn't play? Oh, Chance gave him some good snaps.
Chance a good dude. Chance Warmack,
he
very nice man.
You're right. Yeah, he didn't really pan out, but. But you can tell I'm not a big Quinion Mitchell guy, and I don't believe for a second.
How dare you impugn Quinion Mitchell?
A second that the Eagles are trying to trade up to 12 to get him. I mean, oh Lord. I mean,
I believe it. I'm buying it. I'm buying it, Bob. I'm buying it.
God, yeah. I'm
12 or 16. Mark it down. 12 or 16. But I don't think he'll be there at 16. If they're trading up to 16, they're trading up for an offensive lineman.
Well, I'll tell you this, though. What they should do, I think there's a lot of offensive tackles in this draft with names I can't pronounce. That I mean, they're
you and me both. I have to look at them.
In Oregon, I like the Oregon State guy. What's his name? Fuga. Oh,
Well, I like the Alabama kid because and the Washington kid because they can move around. They can play guard to start. Fuaga, I think, is more of a tackle.
He's more of
and then you're sitting behind Lane and Jordan Mailata for a couple of years.
He could move inside. He's very athletic. And
by the way, he's going to go too high too. I think he's going to go too high.
You'd have to trade way up to get him. He may be the first offensive tackle taken. And
no, that's Joe Alt. Joe Alt.
Oh, I'm sorry, the second. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right. Joe Alt is really. Yeah, I mean
he's man.
He could be a generational talent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Talise Fuaga is the Oregon State player that Bob is bringing him.
He's on.
Yeah, well, so like Howie has, we talked about this earlier, and we always try to find. He has his defaults, right? Hey, offensive line, I'm good there. Boom. But he did have that little run of wide receivers. Is there something that might be a total curveball that you could foresee happening?
A total curve. I'm not so sure about that. I think Brian Thomas should be a guy they're interested in too. I mean, people think I'm crazy for another wide receiver, but okay. Assuming that the reports are correct that AJ Brown, they're at least talking to him about an extension. Which, by the way, I don't really believe. I think they're trying to keep him happy right now. But you're going to need another wide receiver. You go through those. I mean, they've been fortunate in terms of injuries with those guys. So, and this Brian Thomas guy, Brian Thomas Jr. That's the guy.
Yeah, from LSU.
He's really good, and he's a big receiver. He's an AJ Brown type, but he's a little more fluid, if you ask me. So, and that's a huge need. And the other guy, I've seen early mocks with this guy, Brock Bowers. He's not going to be around.
Yes, that's the curveball, Bob.
Yeah,
that's the curveball.
I don't see them going up for a guy like that, but he's the flex tight end.
What about?
He's really talented. If Georgia had thrown him the ball a little bit more, they would have been playing for the national championship.
I've dampened on this over the past 24 hours, but what about edge rusher? What about Latu? If they get medical clearance?
I like the guy from Alabama, but they're not going to get him, right?
He's going to go too high. Dallas Turner, I don't even talk about.
Yeah, the guy you're talking about, to me, he's a little undersized, but he's a real athlete, and he's got an attitude, and he's very smart, and he reminds me of what's this guy's name? Hassan Reddick. He reminds me of Reddick. Yeah, he's really that would be the curveball that I would think about too, right there. Is somebody like that if he started falling, and we don't know how. Well, we do know that 4 of those quarterbacks are going to be taken, right? What if Penix comes off the board, or the other one, Bo Nix?
Bo Nix.
Yeah, and that would be trade down possibility for the.
I do think 6 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round. That's how desperate some of these teams are.
That's criminal. That is just outrageous that these teams are so desperate. Like, do you have to show your desperation on national television that you are that pathetic to find this position?
Well, that's why.
There's only 3 legit quarterbacks, in my opinion.
You're taking a guy that has no business being drafted in the first round just because you're that desperate.
Some of these teams, and that's why Howie's really good at his job. Some of these teams pigeonhole themselves into a corner, and they have to take a quarterback. Minnesota has to take a quarterback. Denver has to take a quarterback at some point. Las Vegas probably has to take a quarterback. These are crappy organizations that paint themselves into a corner. You don't want to be in that situation.
By the way, Minnesota has Sam Darnold, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So this was a guy at one point was the 3rd pick in the draft, has played in the league to some microcosm of success. He's mediocre at best. You're telling me that you think that Bo Nix is going to come in and be ready to be better?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
How do these teams continue to operate this way? You got to be a complete moron to go down that road. It's crazy.
That's why they're bad organizations. And in the case of, I don't think Minnesota's in the conversation for Bo Nix. They're more in the JJ McCarthy range.
Yeah.
Which is completely but I'm with you with Sam Darnold. I'd be like, he spent a year with Kyle Shanahan. Maybe Kyle fixed him. Coach him up instead of reaching for some.
Yeah.
To me, I'm with Bob. There's 3 legitimate quarterbacks: Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and they're probably coming off the board 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. That's what I have him in my mock draft. And Michael Penix, he had receivers that made him look good. And that Michigan,
he did. Yes,
all you have to do is put on the tape of the national championship game, and you could see the way he feared the pass rush. And that's what you're going to get in the NFL. Even from the worst teams, you're going to get that Michigan pass rush. That's going to be a tough fix. Thinking that he.
I will say this about Michael Penix, though, Bob. He turned around that crappy Indiana program before he even got to Washington. So, and he didn't have great talent at Indiana before he transferred out to Washington. So I have a little bit more hope for him than Bo Nix, who Bo Nix is like 27 years old. He's already midway through his prime. I'm exaggerating, but
turned around the Indiana program. Hey, anything good would turn that program around, right? I mean, they had their moments, but they were
that's a Big Ten program.
I look at Michael Penix play, and I think there's a guy who's afraid to get hurt.
And, he's always hurt.
Yeah,
that's part of the problem.
Hurt, I don't see that working at all. But
So,
you guys just mentioned Bo Nix. He's probably, of all the quarterbacks, well, he played the most in college. He's probably going to make the most seamless transition, in the first year. So
he's like a 7-year college veteran.
Right.
Nix.
But is he that good? Nah.
He's already 20. Let's see, he's 24. He'll turn
he's
25.
calling Chris Winkie asking for advice on what to do.
Is he Drew Brees? I don't think so. Yeah.
No. But I think he's going to end up in Denver with Sean Payton. So we'll see how that
trade
works
for
out.
Zach Wilson is kind of interesting.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't see him. Yeah, he just cannot process the NFL playbook.
I mean, listen, he was a disaster with the Jets, no question. But was the second pick in the draft. John, you've mentioned on here before.
The Eagles loved him. Loved Zach Wilson.
If you're going to get paired with somebody to try to get the most, isn't Sean Payton the guy? And does that kind of take them out of the quarterback mix, especially at number 12, which is a spot that has been speculated for Philadelphia often is, hey, you no longer need that quarterback. Let's flip spots and you can get your Bo Nix at 22.
I think you could give a lot of guys to Andy Reid, for instance. And he could turn them into a good quarterback. But here's the problem. When they get to a crappy situation, Justin Fields in Chicago, Zach Wilson, by the time they get to their second team, they're already ruined. They're ruined. They're done. They're
most
cooked.
of the time. Yeah.
That's why I have a little bit of confidence.
Alex Smith.
Really, it took him a while, but he really caught on.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of confidence in Sam Darnold because he spent a year with Kyle Shanahan, and he probably knows a little bit more about playing quarterback now. But he might have been ruined by the years with the Jets in Carolina. You don't know. Those guys, David Carr. I don't think David Carr was a bad quarterback. He just got sacked 80 times, and he was so skittish from that point forward.
Right.
I think he'd be one to a great situation. He'd be a hell of a lot better than Derek Carr and the opposite.
But, I don't know about better than Derek Carr, but there was another guy who didn't process, man. I mean, some people just can't see how the game unfolds,
How do you process when you're under siege, Bob?
Well, that's part of it. Maybe you get rid of the ball as soon as you get the snap. You do something. You don't just take a sack every play. So, I mean, there's guys that and in this day and age, for teams to miss on that, it just boggles the mind. How could you not know? You see the way he reacts to pressure. How can you not know watching the tape? If you can't, you need to hire somebody who can figure that out just by watching the tape.
By the way, even Caleb Williams, that poor guy's got to go to Chicago. So people can talk about how good he is. When is the last? You got to go back to Jim McMahon and then what? Sid Luckman? What are we going back to in Chicago? Was Sid in Chicago?
Sid Luckman wasn't a runner. I covered him back in the day. He was not a runner. He was, and he could process. Yeah. So
they do not have a good history with quarterbacks, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, they're going to get it right with him. He's really good. He's creative. He's got a great arm. He's mobile. They're going to get it right with him. They'll put
there's betting odds on what colored nail polish he's going to wear tomorrow night.
Well, that alone, I'm not taking him number one.
I'm not joking, by the way.
I'm not taking him number one.
That is a Jimmy Shapiro email that I got yesterday from the What color nail polish will Caleb Williams be wearing?
I must have deleted that Jimmy Shapiro email quickly because I didn't see that. Here, I have it. Primary color of Caleb Williams.
You thought I was making that up on a platform such as this with all these viewers? I'm gonna embarrass myself.
Black is the favorite. Green green is the long shot. Black the favorite. Green the long shot.
Okay, that's good. What's the over and under on how many calls it takes for the Eagles to complain, or the Sixers to complain about the officiating tomorrow night?
Well, if Pittsburgh trades under the Eagles' nose, I think Howie Roseman is going to file a grievance.
Yeah. That stuff just blows my mind. I mean, come on, man. just play the game. Like they were just standing around watching, except for Tyrese Maxey, who got hijacked. Like
mugged. He got mugged.
Well, everybody
keep that
gets.
in mind.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind, guys, that the Sixers game and the Eagles draft seemingly falls on the same day every year. I don't know why the NBA continues to say, hey, let's put our best matchup, the only matchup that anybody's really watching, and put it up against the NFL's monster night of the offseason. Bravo. But that's where Howie Roseman says, even if the Sixers win, I will blow them off of Bob Grotz's column, and I want to get my name right up to the top. Do the Eagles still think that way?
Yeah,
Well, I think they do, but I don't think they. I'm thrilled that the draft is Thursday night, so I don't have to watch that Sixers game. They're just torture to watch that team. I don't even enjoy watching that team, so I'm kind of thrilled that I'll be busy.
That's gonna be a war. Oh, I mean, they're gonna start haymakers from the first play, from the tip off.
I'm more concerned about I'm more concerned about the traffic, Bob. You know me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll get there early. But you know what? For the draft, I mean, the first night, the way they stretch this thing out, come on. I mean, this is too much, man. Do it. I remember when they used to do it all in one night. I covered drafts like that.
Yeah, I used to like the Saturday, Sunday setup. I'd like 2 days over the weekend. Those were my favorites.
Breaking it up, I mean, it's a lot of waiting. So it doesn't bother me that the draft is on the night of the Sixers game, because I'll be watching the Sixers.
I'll be the exact opposite.
I'll be the NBA, by the way. The NBA is going to a 2-night draft now too. It's Wednesday and Thursday. The round 1 is Wednesday and round 2 is on Thursday.
There's no need for that. There's
unbelievably
no need.
I want to watch round 2 of the NBA draft.
You're going down to the very, very big hardcores, but
you don't even want to. Nobody even knows the guys in round 1 anymore. Who are you kidding?
Yeah.
Jeez,
right? I'm thinking about that. Yeah,
Bob. If you started reading mock drafts in the way too early mock draft titles the day after the draft, many people, the most mocked guy I've seen is Nate Wiggins. I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel that he has been. Do you guys feel that you saw someone else more attached to the Eagles at 22 than Nate Wiggins?
I think that Mitchell guy. I've seen a lot of mocks with that, but Wiggins is
Mitchell's a trade-up scenario. Wiggins is if I stay.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Wiggins stuff, and I just think it's an example of why mock drafts are absolutely useless. Not that he's a bad player. He's just a bad fit for the Eagles. I mean, he's 170 pounds soaking wet.
He plays.
Yeah,
and
he's great.
Him against Division I. I mean, legit quarterbacks, not like the guy from Toledo. I mean,
I think he's a great press coverage corner.
I look at the highlights. He's reading the eyes of a quarterback who is going to be selling furniture, in a couple months, And I'm thinking, this guy shot up the boards, and he had a great weightlifting workout at the combine. I'm thinking, I don't need my cornerback to be lifting weights, to be benching 220. I don't know about.
Yeah, I would be stunned if the Eagles take Nate Wiggins, and I'll say it I'll probably be wrong, but I just do not. I don't see the fit at all. At all, I don't see that fit.
Are there other guys in that mold that you keep seeing that you're like, that doesn't make any sense?
Cooper's a big one. I think as the process has gone on, I think Cooper DeJean has been a big connection. If you stay at 22, but I don't think there's any way they're staying at 22. I think there's how he gets these deals done in advance. He does all the legwork and homework leading up to the draft. And, some certain things have to happen, but, if you're putting a percentage on it, probably 85%, he knows who wants to come down, 90% who wants to come down if he wants to go up. And then if things fall the right way, you just make the deal, call the guy up. That's all the legwork before the draft.
up in like five of the last 8 drafts or something.
Yeah, 4 of the last 5 he's traded up.
All right, he's even more than that. Yeah, but he's a trade up guy. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if he traded back. Like the year they got Goddard. So they
that year was a little bit. They had the 32nd pick because they won the Super Bowl, and they didn't want Lamar Jackson, the 5th-year option, but they knew somebody was going to come up for Lamar to get that 5th-year option. So they were taking advantage of a unique situation, and it worked out for him. They got Dallas Goedert. That was a great draft. That was the Dallas Goedert, Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox, Jordan Mailata draft.
Well, and I guess the fact that they have the 2 second-round picks makes a trade up more possible because of that. The fact that they have the 2 picks in the second round.
Yeah, but we had a Brooke over on in the first hour, Bob. He pointed out that the Eagles have 50 and 53. Their 53rd pick, they got LaShawn McCoy at 53. They got Miles Sanders at 53. They got Jalen Hurts at 53. So you want to trade the 50. You don't want to trade the 53. That's what that says, right, Bob?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like that's good 53 research, by the way. Real good.
That is good 53 research.
Like when you're at the craps table, you want 7, right? Yeah.
By the way, the Eagles used to have this great draft guide they would put out every year where you could do easy research on that 53. They no longer do that, Bob Krause.
Yeah.
Everything gets taken away from
That's a surprise, isn't it?
Yeah. Shocker.
It's a new age. Yeah. You can't even get stats at these games. I was up in Madison Square Garden. They always handed out.
Oh, you had to go to the game?
The NBA game. Yeah. And
did you take New Jersey Transit in right under Penn Station?
Yeah,
Is that what, did you go the Hamilton routes?
I went to Hamilton. Yeah.
All right.
The park. Yeah. But, that trip up there, I mean, it's a reasonable fare and everything, but it takes forever. You stop.
Oh, it takes forever. You get the one that stops at every. Yeah, it's awful.
From Hamilton. Yeah, it stops everywhere. They let people say their goodbyes, before the train takes off. I feel like I'm in 15.
It's like a cruise. It's like a cruise through beautiful North Jersey.
It's like being in a black and white movie, And
well, Bob,
doctor waves his arm.
We'll let you get back on your way to Brazil. We don't want your drive to be stalled. And it doesn't seem that your coffee's probably cold by now.
No.
Is that a tea or a coffee?
It's a coffee, yeah. Yeah.
Nice latte?
I'll be in Delaware in a minute, I'll see you
guys. Are you going to visit Martin Frank? You're our 2 Delaware guys. Jody's not here anymore. Yeah.
Right, exactly. All right, guys. John,
All right, Bob.
All right.
All right, Bob. Get there early. Traffic. Get there early.
I will do that. See ya.
See ya.
Bob Groats, everybody, from the Delco Times. Traveling on this Wednesday morning, draft eve, where all the scenarios are on the table. As we all know, sometimes paralysis by analysis, and you get to that time of the day where that time of the draft season where you're just like, all right, make that pick already. But as we've kind of hinted from everybody that we've heard from today and the weeks leading up, the trade seems to be where a lot of people feel this is going to end up.
Yeah. Well, Howie said it himself. He likes the trades. Yeah. And I think he's right, by the way. I talk all the time about, if you're a bad team, you want more picks. You want to trade down. If you're a good team, you want to identify a potential difference maker and go get him. If you like the player, that's a Sean Payton quote, go get him. If you like the player, go get him.
By the way, Daniel Jeremiah was on the John Clark Takeoff podcast, and some of the audio of that's coming out. He says he's going to trade. He's not going to stay. I'll go 70% up, 30% back, 0%. He stays at 22. So,
well, I'm with DJ, and obviously DJ used to work for the Eagles. He knows how they work, and that's where I am. He's going to try to trade up, but again, that doesn't mean you can trade up, and you have to match with the teams, and there are other people trying to do things. And if he can't trade up, and if it doesn't work out, then I think he would rather trade back, because I think you're going to get very similar players at 22 and say 30.
Yeah,
Somewhere
there's
in
not
that
a
range.
guy for me. Like a lot of times by now, I'm like, all right, I would move up for X, Y, or Z. I don't have that guy that I'm like, man, I really hope they can make that move and go grab that particular guy. I'm in the boat of either if I have an established player that someone's willing to move on from because of contractual situations, which, by the way, the Eagles have done in the past with many guys. A.J. Brown obviously is one, but they've done others. And now I'm not saying you would trade pick 22 for a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but they've made trades where they've given up picks to get established players. If you had that player that made sense, I would be in that camp. But definitely what you're saying, John, and Brookover brought this over, get multiple guys in rounds 2, 3. If you can load up there.
Well, I don't think they need volume. That's not the point. I think, and that's why I think, because they're a contender, I don't think they need volume. So to me, it's more about evaluation of the player. And you might as well pick up extra draft capital. You might want to trade up later in the draft.
Well, I'm not even saying volume for like help right away. I'm talking about volume for competition and depth. I feel like that's where a team, it gets overlooked sometimes, is the competition and depth that you have making your overall roster better. Because as we talked about the first day I filled in, when Robert Griffin III said they have the best roster in football. I don't know if it's the best, but I don't know if it's the best, but I still think they have a top 7
5
or 8, 7. Yeah, okay, 5. They still have a pretty good 22 foundation. I think it's the peripherals that need more, and getting more guys in those 2 to 4 range adds more competition and depth.
Yeah, to me, it's they don't have a lot of open roster spots, number one. And even you talk about a guy like Rodgers at the start. Now they're deeper at cornerback. He's officially back. He's an NFL player. And they become a little bit deeper there. So I don't see a lot of space for this big number of rookies. Yeah. So that's part of the reason why I don't care about volume. And then the second part is the evaluation. Look, if you're going to get the same player at 22 and 30, or somebody similarly on your board, why not get something else and then trade up later? Maybe where you don't have anybody you want and you got to move up a little bit. Even on day 3, you do this kind of maneuvering and say, all right, you have a targeted group of players for each position on the board, and you say they're all gone, or if this last one, I got to go up and get them. Yeah. And it gives you just more ability to maneuver. But yeah, plan A is to go target one particular player. My odds are Quinyon Mitchell's that player right now. That's where I ended up at. I started at Quinyon Mitchell way back, and I'm going to moved off him, and now I'm going to end on him. That to me is the guy. And if you're able to get it done, that's plan A. Everything else is contingency. Plan B, plan C, plan D.
I'm going to ask you this question to chew on as we come back for our final segment. One name that's been connected to the team that's a bust, that you're like, that guy will be a bust. I think I know the answer, but think about it. And when we come back, I want you to answer that question for me, John, as we wrap up a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 next.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today, and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
All right, welcome back. Birds 365 on a Wednesday. It's the eve of the NFL draft. If on Friday, John, they take this player, who will be the bust?
Drake May to New England will be an absolute disaster. They're not ready.
Is it because he puts ketchup on his steak and eggs?
No, it's because they're not ready for a quarterback to have success. Very poor situation. No receivers. And enormous expectations. He's going to have to get on the field immediately. Jacoby Brissett isn't going to hold down. I think he's in New England. I think that's their bridge.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
that will be a disaster. And then if JJ McCarthy lands with the Giants, that will be a disaster. So it's interesting because if either lands with Minnesota, I think they have a chance because Minnesota has Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson and Christian Darrisaw and Kevin O'Connell's and Josh McCown's there now.
Yeah, Minnesota's an interesting team to go to. I think that would be probably a solid situation.
Yeah.
You know, if you have those weapons to throw to.
Yeah, and we talked to situation matters. In New England, the guy's going to have nothing, and expected to produce at a high level, and it's just going to be ugly in my.
Well, the one problem Minnesota has had throughout their years is the offensive line has been a disaster for them. Are they better there?
Yeah, well, they're great at tackle. They have been. They switched that. You and I have been talking for years. Yeah, their interior still needs work, but Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, I mean, those guys are good. So, I mean, Brian O'Neill's been the best right tackle, not named Lane Johnson in the NFC for like 4 years now. Darrisaw is one of the top 2 or 3 young left tackles in the game.
Yeah.
They're really good at tackle. They need help inside. They still need to get better on the interior. But if for a young quarterback to get Jefferson and all those weapons, and now they have Aaron Jones as well. And you have Darisaw and Brian O'Neill. That's pretty good. And all the agents want to steer their player, but they can't, They want to steer their quarterback to Minnesota for that reason. New England not ready. The Giants with that offensive line, J.J. McCarthy, that would be Daniel Jones part 2.
If the Eagles ended up with Leatu Latu, how funny will the fans' pronunciations be?
Oh, tremendous. Any of the Samoan tackles,
It's a lot in this draft. My gosh.
Yeah. Any of them.
Latu, I said before, I give you my 3 players that I'm liking. He is becoming the guy that I'm like, man, I would really like it to map out. That
He's a good player. He's a good player. And the whole thing about him is the medical. He might be off the board. He might be completely off the board for the Eagles.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Latu would be one of them. I like the Washington Fatanu as well. Yeah, he's another guy that I really like if they ended up there. I don't think 22 would be the spot, but I'd have some intrigue for 22 would not be the spot. But Edgerrin Cooper would be an interesting if they can get him.
I would love to get Edgerrin Cooper in the second round. I think you're in no man's land because you can't take him, as you said, you can't take him at 22.
Right.
And he's not going to be there at 50. So you're kind of in no man's land. Unless for some reason they don't trade, they take somebody at 22, maybe Cooper, DeJean, and maybe you trade 53 and 50 to go up to get him. There's always a way. I think Edgerrin Cooper would be a day 1 starter for the Eagles.
Yeah,
as a second round pick, and that's all you want. But I don't see how they get him.
Yep, those are my 3 that I would be very happy with if we said the Eagles ended up with one of those 3 guys. What more tomorrow right here? As the draft will be here. Tomorrow is draft day. The Eagles sitting at 22 as we currently
everybody's ruined my game. I forgot. I knew the Sixers were playing, but I forgot. Now I'm going to have to deal with the traffic. And the Penn relays, I think, are going on as well. It's going to be awful, Mike. It's ruined my day.
Well, would you go to NovaCare?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will be checking in, I guess, tomorrow. I think I'm on tomorrow and tentatively for Friday, and hope to see or have everybody see us then right here on another edition of Birds 365. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.